5 people are alive following a daring Coast Guard rescue some 260 nautical miles off the coast of Cape Hatteras.
In the United States, when disaster strikes in the water, we turn to the Coast Guard.
Well, rescue helicopters are flying all over the Carolinas to help evacuate flood victims. The Coast Guard says
today it's renowned for its fast-moving cutters, helicopter pilots, and rescue divers. But 150 years ago, what we know now as the Coast Guard was just a speck on the horizon.
In the United States Life-Saving Service, when these men did these incredible rescues, it's all manpower. It's rowing boats out into the ocean over the breakers that would sometimes take them hours.
And the unofficial motto of that service at the time was, you have to go out, but you don't have to come back.
I'm Anissa Khalifa. This is The Broadside, where we tell stories from our home in North Carolina at the crossroads of the South. This week, the incredible story of the Pea Island Life-Saving Station, and how an extraordinary group of men helped professionalize the art of saving a life against all odds.
They were faithful to the United States, even when the United States wasn't necessarily faithful to them. I'll tell you, this story, it just has so many different facets and so many details. I hope I can keep up with everything.
This is friend of the podcast, Brad Campbell. He writes a monthly feature for Our State magazine called Hidden History.
So I get to go all over the state of North Carolina and uncover these amazing stories that really haven't been well told previously. So it's a lot of fun.
And one of those stories takes place in the waters just off the coast of the Outer Banks.
It's called the Graveyard of the Atlantic for a reason. Several hundred shipwrecks along the coast of North Carolina because of the shifting shoals and the extreme weather that can blow in.
According to Brad, this dangerous stretch of coastline lived up to its reputation, with one remarkable wreck in particular. On October 11th, 1896.
The E.S. Newman, it was a 3-masted schooner, had lost its sails and drifted 100 miles south and was grounded at a place about 2 miles south of Pea Island in the middle of the night in the midst of a hurricane.
The 1896 East Coast Hurricane, as it would become known, was the equivalent of a Category 2 storm, with winds topping out over 100 miles an hour. Despite these brutal conditions, members of the U.S. Life-Saving Service stationed at Pea Island spotted the stricken boat and set out to mount a rescue, 1890s style.
So they hitched up 2 mules to their rescue cart.
Mules! Wow!
And moved in the midst of a hurricane in the middle of the night down the beach. And as they come abreast of it, the ship is actually being torn apart by the waves.
Brad says in better weather, they would have fired a line from a small cannon to the wreck and towed the survivors to shore.
But there was actually no solid ground on which to stand. It was all just surf, so they couldn't fire the gun.
So their leader, a keeper named Richard Etheridge, asked for volunteers to swim to the ship. 2 men stepped forward.
And they donned their cork life vests, took hold of a line, and waded out into the surf, and then began to swim out to the stricken ship.
And if you're thinking to yourself, that sounds recklessly heroic, Brad says you're not wrong.
Absolutely. And the unofficial motto of that service at the time was, you have to go out, but you don't have to come back. That was the ethos of the U.S. Life-Saving Service at that time.
Back in the surf, with just a rope and a big piece of cork to keep themselves afloat, the two men fought to reach the E.S. Newman, dodging debris and massive waves.
And they finally reach the ship, connect to the line, and they make their first rescue. They rescue the 3-year-old son of the captain, a young boy named Tommy.
All told, they did this 9 times, in the driving rain, in the pitch dark, until every person on the boat safely reached shore.
It took them about 6 hours total. So they started about, I think, 7:30 at night and ended up at like 1 o'clock in the morning.
The wind, the poor visibility, the treacherous surf, all of it made this one of the most daring rescue operations ever conducted in the Outer Banks. But there was one more extraordinary thing about this event. The surfmen, every one of them working out of the Pea Island Life-Saving Station in the late 1800s.
They were all black men. And it became the first and one of the only all-black U.S. life-saving stations in the United States.
White sailors relied on black surfmen to save their lives in this stretch of dangerous water in the deeply segregated South of the late 1800s. But how did that happen? It all started with a crisis. In 1877 and 78, the Outer Banks were the site of 2 famous shipwrecks, the Huron and the Metropolis. Nearly 200 people drowned, and the U.S. government later determined that the deaths were preventable. And while the U.S. Life-Saving Service would later become the U.S. Coast Guard, at the time, it simply was not up to the task, and it took nearly all the blame.
In the 1870s, it was very much a fledgling service, and they had all kinds of growing pains. There was a lot of patronage. It was only a part-time job. There were unqualified people who were filling posts. And as a result of those 2 shipwrecks, the U.S. Life-Saving Service took a very close look at the people who were manning these stations. And in the Pea Island Station in particular, they determined that the keeper of that station was incompetent, and they recommended that he be replaced.
Oh.
Not only did they recommend that he be replaced, but they recommended that he be replaced by a man by the name of Richard Etheridge. And what's interesting about this is that Richard Etheridge was a black man, and at the time, black men were only allowed to fill the lowest position at one of the life-saving stations. So what they were recommending was something that was absolutely unprecedented.
But the story of Richard Etheridge doesn't start there. And it's almost as dramatic and unlikely as the rescue of the E.S. Newman itself.
It really is, it's absolutely crazy.
There's just like a family dynamic that I cannot wrap my head around in any way.
He really lived in 2 different worlds.
More on that after a short break.
If you've been to the Outer Banks before, you know how much it's developed over the years.
Writer Brad Campbell is of course referring to the tens of thousands of vacation homes that dot the coastline of North Carolina.
But if you head south into the Cape Hatteras National Seashore, what you will see is a landscape that is very much like it was 150 years ago. You're just talking about sea and sand and surf and wind.
And it was in this beautiful but rugged environment that Richard Etheridge was born into slavery on Roanoke Island in 1842.
His mom was Rachel Doe, and she was a slave. But we suspect, based on all the research that has been done, is that his father was a white man, John Etheridge. And he was actually raised in the Etheridge household. And against the laws of the time, he was taught to read and write. And his father is the one who gave him all of these wonderful skills that he developed in terms of handling a boat, fishing, hunting, and understanding the waters off the coast of North Carolina.
But he was enslaved still?
But he was still a slave, and when he was, I believe, 17 or 18, John Etheridge gave Richard Etheridge to John Etheridge's other son. So he lived basically in two different worlds. He was both a slave and a family member.
So his father owned him, and then his brother owned him.
That's correct, yes.
Wow.
When I was working on the story, I talked to Joan Collins, who has a long family history with the Pea Island Life-Saving Station. And one of the first things she said when I started asking her about Richard Etheridge is that she said, it's complicated. And it is incredibly complicated.
For me, I guess on a personal level, it gives me a passion to kind of make sure that I can do whatever I can do to make this history known.
Joan Collins is the Director of Outreach and Education for the Pea Island Preservation Society, a nonprofit that works to preserve the life-saving station's history.
You know, this history that is not the stereotypes that people think of when they think of the South.
Joan says the turning point in the life of Richard Etheridge was the Civil War. Early in the conflict, Roanoke Island was captured by Union forces, and it became the site of a freedmen's colony that attracted formerly enslaved people from around coastal Carolina. This presented newly freed men like Etheridge with the opportunity to enlist in the U.S. Army.
And he would have fought for the colored troops during the Civil War, you know, like many men did on Roanoke Island.
Etheridge distinguished himself in campaigns across Virginia, rising to the rank of sergeant, which at the time was the highest possible rank for a black man.
After the war ends and Etheridge comes back, he gets married, he has a family, and a lot of people don't realize that on the Outer Banks, yes, in the 1800s, you had blacks, you know, to work at some of these life-saving stations. And Etheridge worked at a station called the Pea Island Life-Saving Station.
Pea Island was what was known as a checkerboard station, staffed by a mix of white and black crew members. This is where Etheridge was working when he got the big promotion to take over the Pea Island station.
So he's asked to leave Pea Island as the lowest in rank and take command of a neighboring station.
How did the folks in the surrounding community feel about that?
Well, history shows that people were upset.
That might actually be an understatement. Not only did the entire white crew at Pea Island quit in protest, shortly afterward, the station burned to the ground.
Why do you think that happened?
Was it arson?
Never proven to be, always suspected to be.
But the superintendent who promoted Etheridge stuck to his guns. The station was rebuilt, and Etheridge hired an all-black crew who'd be willing to follow his orders.
So that's how the historic all-black crew begins.
Multiple generations of Joan's family served at Pea Island, including one of the men involved in the rescue of the E.S. Newman. And her father was based there until the station was decommissioned by the Coast Guard many years later.
It was deactivated in March 1947, so that would have been the last time he closed the doors and turned over the keys.
And yet, despite her close ties to all of this, Joan was never taught the story of the all-black life-saving crew. It wasn't until much later in life, when her aging father was recognized for being one of Pea Island's last surviving surfmen, that she began to ask questions.
Why is he getting all of this attention? And what is this history?
Stories have a way of disappearing under the ocean, just like these ships do. I mean, this story disappeared like the E.S. Newman did. I mean, it just slipped beneath the waves for almost a century.
Brad Campbell from Our State magazine says it might have stayed there if it weren't for the efforts of two grad students in the 1990s named David Wright Falade and David Zobe.
They found out all about Richard Etheridge's background. They found out about the history of this life-saving station. And they just started sort of putting all these pieces together. And one of the conclusions that they drew was they thought, these men deserve a gold medal.
The Gold Life-Saving Medal is one of the highest honors given out by the U.S. Coast Guard, awarded for extreme acts of heroism while saving a life. Brad says it's estimated that the men at Pea Island rescued roughly 200 people from the sea during their years of service.
But the Pea Island Station surfmen never received any recognition at all for the work that they did. And so they began to petition the United States Coast Guard to give them a gold medal posthumously. And they were actually turned down.
But that only increased public interest, and a subsequent letter-writing campaign started by a 14-year-old girl caught the attention of then-President Bill Clinton.
It was a very strongly worded letter, and one of the things that she said was, that someone would be denied something that was rightfully theirs because of the color of their skin is outrageous. It's shameful.
The campaign was ultimately successful, and in 1996, the 7 surfmen at Pea Island who rescued the passengers on the E.S. Newman were posthumously awarded the Gold Life-Saving Medal. Joan Collins, whose father attended the ceremony, says the story of the Pea Island Life-Saving Station is a perfect example of the complex and varied lives of Black people in the South.
You know, look at the time frames in American history. So this is shortly after the Civil War in the South. This is Reconstruction. This is Jim Crow. This is prior to any discussion of the Civil Rights Movement. So you have this one station, this all-Black station, that's part of this incredible history of the United States Life-Saving Service that people don't know about. So yes, I say yes, let Etheridge raise visibility to that history. Yes, why not?
There's now a bridge on Pea Island and a U.S. Coast Guard cutter named after Richard Etheridge. And in the late 2000s, the cookhouse at the Pea Island Life-Saving Station was moved to Manio and dedicated as a museum. Joan's dad was there to open its doors, 61 years after locking up the station for the last time. This episode of The Broadside was produced by me, Anissa Khalifa, and our editor, Jared Walker. The rest of our team includes producer Charlie Shelton Ormond and executive producer Wilson Sayre. If you want to know more about the Pea Island Life-Saving Station, we've put links to Joan Collins' work with the Pea Island Preservation Society and Brad Campbell's reporting in the episode description. Brad also highly recommends that you check out the book Fire on the Beach that was written by David Wright Falade and David Zobe. The Broadside is a production of WUNC News in North Carolina and is part of the NPR network. If you have feedback or a story idea, you can email us at broadside@wunc.org. If you enjoyed the show, leave us a rating, a review, or share it with a friend. Thanks for listening, y'all. We'll be back next week.
TV has thousands of free movies and TV shows.
I swear.
If I'm lying, I'm dying.
This is the mindset.
Free.
This is the mantra.
Free.
This is the...
movies like Interstellar, Dreamgirls, and Gladiator.
Are you not entertained?
And TV shows like Survivor, SpongeBob SquarePants, The Fairly Odd Parents, and Ghosts. Pluto TV is always free. Huzzah! Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.